and uprisings in the past. The opposition says they are committed to ensuring that Uganda undergoes a peaceful transition in 2016 and has insisted that they have no plan to remove the NRM government from power using violent means. This message has been re-echoed in the regions where all party presidents of opposition parties represented in parliament, civil society leaders and former FDC President Dr. Kiiza Besigye addressed meetings. Dr. Besigye spent a lot of time explaining why Uganda does not need another conflict and why it's important for people to instead use their vote power to change the government. Now, in the recent past, some opposition leaders hinted at violence and possible people's uprising in the style of the Arab Spring riots. Now, Dr. Besigye and his colleagues have also mentioned a united front against the NRM. They say this time they're serious and they would soon announce a joint campaign agenda. Now, some people have suggested that the opposition should now be busy building party structures to address their weaknesses instead of wasting time up country. Others have insisted that the proposed amendments should be tabled in parliament. Now, tonight we'll look at the peace process and message being passed on to the masses by the opposition, their quest for electoral reforms and what role Dr. Besigye would play before and during the 2016 election period. Our guest is Richard Colonel Dr. Kiiza Besigye, former Forum for Democratic Change president. You're most welcome, Dr. Besigye.
Thank you very much, Edmund, and a very good evening to all the Radio 1 listeners out there, and wish you good listening.
Dr. Besigye, what is your message as you move around the country?
Well, our message and campaign is a very simple and straightforward one. It is a campaign for free and fair elections now. That is the designation of the campaign. It's for free and fair elections now. And it obviously means that it's a call that recognizes there have been no free and fair elections up to now. And we are trying to indicate what can engender free and fair elections. And the important thing about elections and why we are making the effort we are making is that it is the avenue that can deliver peaceful transition. It is the avenue that can deliver peaceful transition. Uganda, it must be recalled, since it became a country, Uganda has never had peaceful transition, has never had one peaceful transition, never. Every leader has had to be bombed out of office, and every leader has had to come bombing their way into office. Now, this is tragic for our country, it's tragic for our community, and it's a cycle that we would rather see end. And it will not end on its own. There must be deliberate, very deliberate steps by all Ugandans, not by political parties, not by some leaders, not by civil society. It must be a concerted effort by every Ugandan, because failure to make peaceful transition at the end of the day will definitely affect every Ugandan, old or young, woman or man, everybody will be affected. And this is why it must be everybody's business and not the business of some, which some Ugandans seem to think it is. We have mapped out what is critical to be achieved in order to have a transition. Now, maybe for our listeners, I should just quickly explain why we cannot have this conversation of how to get a free and fair election in Parliament, because that is some of the things that our people ask. They say, we have an institution in Parliament, which is a legislature. Why don't you go to the legislature? We should understand how this Parliament came to be, because indeed we have had parliaments before. when Mr. Museveni went to the bush in 1981, a new parliament had just been elected, actually. His own party had got one member of parliament, and there was an elected parliament. Yeah, so, no.
Because
Kionga, Crispus Kionga. But he's campaigned into exile, he didn't go to parliament. You know, some Ugandans, sometimes you wonder whether they have any sense of history or not. Because people who are asking, but there is parliament, cannot remember that there was parliament in 1981. Why then did we have a war? They can't remember that we had actually an election. People are saying, but there is an election. We had just had an election in 1980. 2 months later, a war broke out, and it consumed 500,000 people. So the question is not having an election, the question is not having the name parliament and some people warming those seats in parliament. The question is what quality, what character are the elections, what character are the institutions that you are talking about. Now, let me deal with the current parliament. When NRM took over power in 1986, it overthrew the constitutional order that was there by force. Power was captured by NRA, the military, and it vested it in NRC and NRM, the political wing of NRA. So you should understand that NRM were one institution, were an armed organization. NRM was an armed organization that took over power. Having taken over power, it now transformed itself into the state of Uganda. The armed organization transformed itself into the state of Uganda. In other words, its institutions became state institutions. The NRA, which was the military organization of NRM, became the National Army. The NRC, which was the policy organ of NRM, became the National Parliament. It was an organization's policy organ.
Yes.
Became the National Parliament. And so did all the other elements of NRM translate into government institutions. Mr. Museveni, who then had become chairman of NRM, became the president. He also became the Speaker of Parliament. And actually Parliament had only 38 members who came from the bush as policy organ members of NRM. They became the Parliament, the 38. 2 died shortly after coming into government. They remained 36. I happen to be one of them. Now, this remained the situation. All the other parties which had been in existence in the country were frozen by law not to operate. So the NRM state became the only political institution. And it remained, and the program of NRM promised that there will be a transition within 4 years. And what was supposed to be achieved in order for that transition to happen was to rebuild state institutions that would be independent and competent, to rebuild on a framework of a new constitutional order that would then give way to free and fair elections for a new dispensation. Now, unfortunately, that transition, which was supposed to be achieved in the first 4 years, has never been achieved up to now, 30 years on.
What do you mean?
Exactly that. That unfortunately, that transition was sabotaged. It has never been achieved. So, the parliament we started with, which was an NRM parliament, after 4 years we increased and said the NRM should stay. For the transition period should continue. eventually it lasted 10 years. So for the first 10 years, there was no form of pretense at all. It was an NRM state, pure. Anybody who wanted to function within the political institutions had to do so within NRM. Now, the constitution-making process, 1994, 93, 94, was a critical moment that would have then redefined the institutions of state and the political infrastructure that went along with them. Instead of doing that, Mr. Museveni, no one else, Mr. Museveni manipulated that process, and the manipulation is what I wrote about in 1999. It still stands. Whoever wants to know the details of how the transition was sabotaged, I refer you to what I wrote in 1999, how the Constituent Assembly was sabotaged and eventually produced a one-party system called the movement system. This was actually treason because that's what the whole war had been about. The whole war had been about rebuilding a state that would have independent institutions, that would have independent and credible state institutions, that would have the capacity to mediate free and fair elections so that citizens can freely express their will on who will lead them and how they will be led. That is the whole basis. That was the main thrust of the whole war. Democracy, constructing a democratic transition, and it failed catastrophically by that constitutional manipulation that led to the one-party rule. It was one party that we were against. We ended up with one party, and this was, if anybody doubted what I was saying, the Supreme Court, the Constitutional Court of Uganda, eventually made a unanimous ruling that yes, what is in Uganda is not a movement system at all or something like that. It is a one-party state. This is a finding of the Constitutional Court that was never challenged. So there is absolutely no doubt that Mr. Museveni and some cohorts he was with sabotaged the transition process, constitutionalized a one-party state that then continued from 1996 to 2006 as a one-party state. So we ended up having now 20 years of a one-party, in fact, of a movement state, not even a one-party, because a one-party would entail that you have a party somewhere and you have the state somewhere. They were one. We had a movement state, both in law and in fact, in reality, we had a movement state for 20 years. And in fact, it was because in 2001, said, okay, within the movement state, let us compete. Because that is all I did in 2000.
Yes.
And Mr. Museveni said, no, that is indisciplined. How can you? Nobody has decided that you become a candidate. And he called the movement conference, his movement conference, to endorse him as the sole candidate, exactly in the same way that he is doing now with Mr. Mbabazi. Exactly the same way.
What he did to you, he's doing to somebody else now.
The thing is, even so, in 2001, he was surprised by this new situation that he was even then without parties, with his movement state, that he was being challenged, which he had not prepared for, and he went ahead to break all the pretenses that had been built around what he was calling a no-party system, which provided all the evidence that was needed in court to trash it and demonstrate that indeed this is not a no-party system, this is a one-party state. And so now what the Constitutional Court did was to order that parties whose hands had been tied should now be freed, because this is also a party. So it was the Constitutional Court that ended the movement system, not the referendum that they tried to organize in 2000. But how did it end? So what happened is, yes, in law, now other people were allowed to organize
in practice,
who were not in the movement,
yes,
but the movement state was not dismantled. So the movement state remained in place as it was without any form of change. The only change that happened in 2006 was to say, and in fact that's what Mr. Museveni was saying all along. He was saying to Bejeko, those who want to organize separately, let them go and organize separately. But for us, the movement is continuing undeterred. So the movement state remained, but they allowed those who were not, who were dissatisfied with what was going on to now organize outside the movement state. But there is no movement party and movement and the government. It is one and the same. So there is no multi-party democracy up to now. So the election, when you talk about, the control of all state resources or state institutions or state apparatus is as it was from 1996 up to 2006. It remained exactly the same. So the elections are bought for whomever they want to buy. The state institutions are used to rig for whomever they want to rig to come to parliament. And, state funding and the ESOs, DSOs, the military, now they are PSOs and I don't know, whatever. So, this whole thing, therefore, that creates the parliament, is not a parliament that is engendered by free democratic institutions. It's not. It's what brings forth this parliament is still the one-party state, really, in effect. And that is why, indeed, it remains firmly under the control of Mr. Museveni. Whenever they want to discuss anything in parliament, they have to go to State House.
Yes.
for the caucus. That's where decisions are taken. So the parliament is really just a rubber stamp. They come back to formalize what was discussed. Now, the whole idea of democracy is supposed to you are supposed to have, even under multi-party system, you are supposed to have separate institutions. You are supposed to have checks and balances within the arms of government, which quite obviously is not there and is not intended to be there, and therefore that is why, just like people went to the bush when there was parliament in 1980,
yes,
that is why this parliament cannot be the parliament that mediates a transition.
So how do you want to do it?
So
go to the trenches once again.
No. So what we have been advocating, and the whole campaign, the whole purpose of our campaign is to get Ugandans to understand all this, so that Ugandans now craft a mechanism that can bring us together to negotiate a transition. And through a mechanism we recommend as a national consultation, as a national convention, to have a national convention that brings together all stakeholders. And this, Uganda would not be the first kind of, country to use this mechanism to negotiate a transition, to negotiate how to now extract NRM from the state, so that the state remains, institutions remain independent, remain credible, remain non-partisan. You've been seeing yes, I mean, we have been writing, talking about all this. and as if
someone stole his tapes.
Yes, as if God wanted to shame the devil. They bring the very person we have been talking about, that this is not an Inspector General of Police. He's just an NRM militia leader. We have been saying this, and it can no person, insane or sane or intelligent or unintelligent, can deny what we've been saying, hearing what comes out of the mouth of Mr. Kare Kayihura, purporting to be an Inspector General of Police. So this goes to simply provide the evidence that these institutions must be reconstructed, and we must have a mechanism through which we reconstruct these institutions, through which we reconstruct the constitutional framework itself, the legal framework, to make it fair and just for everybody, so that NRM now becomes truly a party, gets out of the state, and we are able to compete in a multi-party environment. Today you cannot talk about having a multi-party environment. We simply have the NRM state and political parties, fledgling political parties, that are being, of course, harassed left and right, which are supposed to compete with the state. That cannot be a process that will lead to peace or stability in this country.
You are being unfair to the NRM. This party doesn't have a party headquarters, and you want them to compete with parties like UPC, independent of the same.
They don't need a party headquarters. The party headquarters is State House.
Let's take a break. This is Spectrum Radio on the Battle Station.
Hey, Miss Namiaro, you're very welcome.
Thank you.
Hey, isn't Biaruhanga is here? Mr. Okot.
Oh, Atie,
I'm so happy to see all of you. Come in. You're very welcome.
Just like Stella warmly welcomes you to her house, at Finance Trust, we have always been your trusted financial institution. You have grown, and we've grown too. And now that we have become a commercial bank, our doors are open for you to grow even further. Come and enjoy fast, convenient, and accessible banking services. Welcome to Finance Trust Bank. Finance Trust Bank, putting women first.
Wangula cash from Orange and become a millionaire. 100 million shillings is up for grabs. It's not Wolokoso. To play, simply SMS the word WIN to 156, answer simple questions and the highest points and win. Win 300,000 shillings daily. Win 750,000 shillings weekly. Win 2.5 million shillings monthly. Get the highest points at the end of the promotion and win a grand prize of 25 million shillings. And you could buy a plot of land and build a house. This is your chance to become a millionaire.
Each SMS costs 800 shillings. Wangula Cash Promotions ends in June 2014. For more information, visit www.orange.ug/Wangula. Terms and conditions apply. Fun changes with Orange. Today changes with Orange.
This house has been in our family for years. I remember the first time I painted with my father. I must have been about 12 years old. Yeah?
What has the poor child done?
Mother joked that I was being punished, but I didn't think of it that way. One thing stuck with me though. I remember Dad saying to me,
when it comes to paint, there's really one company you can never go wrong with. I have trust in their products. The quality is unbeatable.
The words stuck with me. And now, as I put the finishing touches on renovating the house, there really is just one option.
When you need quality paint you can trust, look no further than Sadolin. Sadolin, color your world. Spectrum on Radio 1 FM 90.
Welcome back on Spectrum tonight. The road to 2016. Is the opposition committed to a peaceful political process, considering their threats to resort to violence and uprisings in the recent past? Our guest tonight is retired Colonel Dr. Kiiza Besigye, former Forum for Democratic Change president. You will be able to call in and interface with him this evening. Dr. Besigye, this is a complex message for the average mind. Do people understand it? Do they receive it well when you travel out there?
Well, the people, you know, are far more intelligent than normally, I think, acknowledged. People understood long time ago that the ground for elections is not level. They have known this long time, for a long time. And I think the debate has been only in two areas. One, there are those who thought that Museveni will cause problems if they tackle him. And in fact, he has been himself promising that, saying, you know, if you don't vote me, there will be war. So some people have been worried, thinking, you know, maybe we should let him.
He might go to the bush again.
Yes, maybe we should massage him, and he goes
in a nice way.
And yeah, so some people have been living with the hope, quite obviously a false hope, that at some stage Museveni will peacefully leave and go, and then they can start rebuilding the country again. So there have been those who have been optimists, and even right from the time I came up, some people were saying, but this is his last term. And I told them there is no last term for this man unless you are not seeing what you are dealing with. This is a person who is determined to die with the country. Some did not believe me, of course, and they were indeed optimists. And there was the law, which was saying actually that it was his last term. Some did not believe that he would, run over the constitution and so on. So some have been living against, believing against hopes that, somehow, God may intervene and maybe the person will pass away somehow.
God will intervene. Malaria in politics.
Whatever, so without them doing anything proactively to change the situation. There has been that. But secondly, there has also been the real question of what do we do? What are the alternatives? If elections can't work, they cannot allow a free and fair election. So what do we do?
Give us those alternatives.
And that is really the main thrust of our engagement has been to spell out what needs to be done. And I've been hearing, I think, even in your own introduction, a bit of a confusion about what our message is.
Yes.
Our message is, yes, very clear that we need to use peaceful means.
A piece of paper.
Peaceful means, not a piece of paper. We need to use peaceful means as our strategy to get free and fair elections. But we don't have any illusion, actually. Certainly I don't have any illusion that those peaceful means are simply words, that we are simply going to request that Mr. Museveni and his mafia in government.
He has no mafias.
Well, I'm using their own words. that they see sense and change their course and allow changes that can bring free and fair elections. That is not likely to happen. So it must be forced on them.
But you've been talking about peace.
Yes, and this is where I'm saying peace and force are not in conflict. They are forceful ways that are not violent. For example, when there was unfair rules that were imposed on the people on the traders of Kampala. You know, they tried to negotiate to say, but you know, this is unfair, please listen to us, our business are going to suffer. And they said, no, go ahead, and nobody was willing to listen to them. And they woke up one day and closed all their shops and went home.
They tear gas those padlocks that day.
Yes, maybe they did, but what I'm saying is, the traders had to be proactive and to take action, to take matters up and take some action. Now, their action was not violent.
Yes.
But it was nonetheless defiant. It was defiant of what the regime was asking them to do. They did not cooperate with the regime. If you go ahead cooperating or hoping to convince the regime to change, nothing will ever happen. So we must defy
an elected government.
Yes, and it's perfect, you know, like the traders did. They closed their shops. They were their shops after all. Nobody in the government put up those shops for them, and they were completely in their right to close them.
Yes.
When they did, the government was, panicking all over the place just after 2 days. Looking for them, please, you come, we have suspended everything, you open, we shall negotiate later, but you open, you know. So the traders had shown that they have power over the regime with their guns, with their tear gas, with their everything, tankers, fighter aeroplanes. The traders, by their action, were able to show that they had more power than
without having a single
gun, without throwing a stone. They showed that they were capable of forcing. Now, what they did forced the government. It was not a negotiation. It forced the government to change their stance. So, citizens must know that they will have to take actions that force government to change what they are doing.
Like what?
Now, those actions can be violent, can be peaceful.
Yes.
What we are simply recommending is that we use the peaceful options to force government to do what citizens want. For example, and there are a million ways. But for example, if citizens chose not to bring any food to Kampala, said, we have, until what we want happens, we are not going to send any food to Kampala.
People will go to the Sheraton and eat their dinner there.
Yes, Mr. Museveni, I'm sure will import food from Germany and wherever. But what about his soldiers?
They have posho in stock.
Yes, but from who? Who will give them posho? They can try to import the posho, fine, but where will they get the money? Because remember, they get the money from the food that comes to Owino, which they tax, because the person who sells the food then goes and buys a dress which you tax, and so on and so forth. So if people just said, we are not going to cooperate with you, Mr. Government, we are not going to sell anything to you, we are not going to buy anything from you, how long would this regime last?
And the government can last. You know, ministries have not been paying taxes.
Yeah,
131 billion. The government is still going on.
Yes,
taxes have. There's been evasion as well.
It is going on. It is going on to the extent that people are willing to obey or cooperate with it. So governments can only rule if people obey or cooperate with them. Now, what we mean by defiance is to stop that cooperation or obeying what the government wants you to do.
You want people to defy the government?
Yes.
You're inviting tear gas at your next rally.
Doesn't matter. And as I have said, defiance can take all forms. It can take forms that you can tear gas. It can take forms that you even have no capacity to tear gas. But in any event, the violent ones, the ones who use tear gas, the ones who use whatever means, are the government, not the people.
And red pepper.
So for the people, we remain peaceful. Just like you see what happens to me in Kampala. I come with my vehicle and park down here.
You want to go eat fish in the market?
I don't even get out of my vehicle. I park my vehicle, read my newspaper,
And there's pandemonium.
And in no time, there is tear gas, there is everything. Am I the problem?
No, but the Inspector General of Police said some people thought they had turned your home residence into State House, roadblocks here, roadblocks. But the Inspector General of Police says those are guns. He doesn't know them, even though they were police.
Yes, and I'm sure everybody laughs at him because everybody knows that he knows they are there. So the message we are carrying to the people of Uganda is that if we want justice to reign in our country, and justice is what translates into opportunities for everybody, justice is what translates into services, equitable services for everybody, because as long as we are not willing to assert our rights, then it means that those people with guns whom we fear will do as they wish, as they have been doing in fact. Steal from us with impunity, take whatever they want, grab whatever they want. We become slaves in our country. So it's a choice Ugandans have to make. And especially, appeal actually to the elites, because the ordinary people have been doing their fair share. It is the elites, the ordinary people who think that things are comfortable that cause problems for the whole country, because they are the ones who bolster a dictatorship. Lawyers, bankers, engineers,
Kampala club crowd.
Yes, because I think if there are any people who are really short-sighted, I would say they are the educated in this country. And eventually, of course, you'll see them scampering, looking for where to run to when everything is in smoke. This has happened over and over again on Africa, on the African continent. People were building Ivory Coast as a developed country. They're saying, they are doing well. Growth, they talk about growth rate is I don't know what, and the economy is doing well, and but they don't know that all this is simply happening on a time bomb. And eventually it explodes, like it exploded in Ivory Coast, and Abidjan used to look like Paris. So even here,
you think there's a time bomb here? There's no time bomb in this country.
Well, it's again for different people to analyze for themselves. If you think that when you have 83% of your youth unemployed, hopeless, the only activity now, I was shocked when I went to northern Uganda recently.
What did you find?
Because I had not been there for the last 3 years.
Yes.
In Arua, Bulu, Lila, Kitgum, all these places, Nebi, the small towns, the only vibrant place you find is sports betting.
Oh, that's an important economic activity.
You find young men, it may be an important economic activity,
you can
but
become rich overnight.
How does it produce wealth for the country? And this is the only. So if you have 83% of your youth unemployed, if you have the social services down as they are, education, they have been talking about now we should have scientists, you are in a country that cannot make even a safety pin. We import toothpicks from China. We import toothpicks, matchbox, everything. This is a regime, 30 years in office, and you think there is no crisis. Then we are talking about completely different things.
Let's hear from the listeners. This is Spectrum on Radio 1. Our number is 0414 348 111, 031 226 0390, 031 226 1390. Spectrum, hello?
Hello?
Yes, your name?
My name is Fred Robert, and I'm calling from Bali. First of all, I would like to assure retired Kanu that he has failed to mobilize his own structures and only believes on about riot mobilizing people disobedience, like that time when they came to Mbali. And first these young boys in the garage refuse to come out because they know they only want to use riot, and then they make their accountability.
So who rioted in Mbali?
Spectrum, hello? Yes, your name?
Speaking to Joy.
You please switch off your radio and then talk to us. Your name again?
You're speaking to Joyce.
Come again?
Joyce.
Joyce, go on.
Yeah, I would just like to thank Anna for the message. And yeah, we are still hopeful that someday there will be some change.
Thank you, Joyce.
All right, Joyce. Spectrum, hello?
Hello.
Please switch off your radio. Your name?
This is Haruna Semakula General Park.
Haji Haruna.
One time I've ever had a chance to meet Kiiza Besigye in Hotel Africana, and I confronted him over his activities to Yoweri Kaguta Museveni. But many times I've been listening to Yoweri Kaguta Museveni giving ideas to people how they can come out of poverty and all those sort of things. I believe when Besigye got this chance to talk to the family on the radio, he should have been showing them what he intends to do for people to get out of poverty. Is this what he's preaching to people to do, to develop their...
Spectrum, hello?
Good evening, Edmund.
Good evening, your name?
I'm called Kiiza. Actually, I want to submit Kano, where he mentioned that in 2001, that was the last term of the president. Yeah, actually it was in the constitution, and the same constitution with the opportunity. So another issue,
I didn't get the first issue.
So when you criticize it, we don't understand you. We think you are a bit bitter to the president, not the government. Thank you.
I didn't get it.
You can probably call back. His line was not very.
Did you?
Spectrum, hello?
Yes.
Your name?
I am called Fungaro Hassan.
Yes, Honorable Fungaro.
Yeah, I would like to thank Dr. Besigye.
Can you switch off your radio, please?
Yes.
Please go on.
Is it better now?
Better, slightly, yes.
Okay. Now, the prediction of how Uganda will be in the future was given out when Dr. Besigye wrote his first article and published the dangers of the country. People who disagreed with him, people who mistreated him, today are seeing exactly what he was talking about, and they have joined Dr. Besigye, they have joined those who are calling for it. For example, St. Eustace. And now Mama Babali. Mama Babali was one time Minister for Security. Now, somebody like Kale Kaigura, who is carrying out the wrong things today, people should pray to change his heart. Because one day I'm sure Kale Kaigura will come out and say the government is rotten, it is evil, and should be changed.
But he said prophets like that should be ignored. That's what the Inspector General says. Yes, your name?
Good evening.
Good evening, your name?
I'm called Kamia Kenneth, calling from Feta.
Yes, Kamia.
Thank you so much. The problem with the leaders in Africa is that people talk good when you're not taking power. But the moment you enter into power, you turn against will and nothing. I want Doctor to assure us that whatever he tells us really will be right. I mean will be just like what he tells, what he's saying. Thank you.
Spectrum, hello?
Hello. Yes, good evening, Edmund.
Good evening, your name?
Vincent.
Vincent.
I wish to thank Dr. Besigye because of the consistency of his message. When you look at what we've been saying and things that have later unfolded, you can see a consistent man. And I want to encourage and reaffirm, Doctor, if you look at the different latest affirmative actions that have been taken up by different groups, you look at the traders, you look at the teachers, you look at the doctors, all this is accumulative. So we are not really losing ground. This
civil awareness is catching across, the different sectors, and people are getting to appreciate the power that they have.
All right.
And we can still go ahead.
All right. Let's take one more, then we'll get back to the Kano. Hello? Hello?
Yes, speaking to Hassan, I'm calling from Bombo.
Hassan in Bombo, go on.
I wanted to ask Dr. Besigye, if President Museveni gave him an opportunity to meet, I just want to know one thing he would ask him.
If he gave what? Give you a chance to meet with him. Well, it wasn't clear at the end. But he said if you met President Museveni.
Hello, I'm Probali. Yes, I highly appreciate the articulation of Dr. Besigye, and also regard his comments very seriously. But I would like to have, on homosexuality, try the controversial issue which has been spoken about by very many politicians, but I don't have from him the local media. What is it on the homosexuality deal?
All right, let's get back to
Well, I think the first caller was somebody called Robert who was saying we should mobilize our structures. I don't know whether Robert really lives in Mbale, because he would be aware that we had a well-organized meeting in Mbale where we invited our people, we hired the hall, we hired our public address systems and so on, and the police came and kicked everybody out. Now, if the police believe, or if the regime believes that what we are doing is not effective, why would they stop us from talking to people? If what we are saying is wrong, why wouldn't they come and tell them the right thing so that people judge? So it's very clear to you, I think, that the problem is fear on the part of the dictator for people to have information. And they were pulling people out of radio stations. They pulled people out of a radio station in Kabale, in Kasese, Genomuntu, and
they were inciting violence
from a radio station. But even if that was the case, even if what they were saying was wrong, why haven't they charged them? Because if they were inciting violence, it's a crime. Why haven't they taken them to court? So we are simply dealing with a rogue regime. I think everybody should be aware of this. A rogue regime is one that does not respect the law, its laws, or international law. And I think from every account, Uganda is a rogue regime today.
It's a very strong one.
It is. But
people love this government a lot.
Yes, but it is backed by facts. We have been invading other countries in violation of international law.
Restoring peace.
And there is judgment against us. Internally, you have been seeing what is happening even here in Kampala. The court says the Lord Mayor, Kwagwe is still Lord Mayor. They bring the police and the military and surround his office and say, we don't care what the court is saying. That is what I call a rogue regime. Now, on the question raised by Mr. Haruna, saying that Mr. Museveni has been telling people how to get out of poverty. He has had a chance to tell, not only to tell them, but to use their taxes. Because the whole idea of government is to use people's taxes to implement policies that will change their lives. Now, Mr. Museveni's road is not just talk. We have all this crisis of 83% unemployed, poverty biting all over left and right. Everybody turned into a beggar, including leaders. And most of these people who talk for Museveni, they are mainly people who are beggars from Museveni, who go and pick brown envelopes, who are waiting.
Some of them get bags, not just.
Yes, or bags or sacks, they are the ones. So, on the other hand, I have never had an opportunity to run a government. I have at every election presented a manifesto of the type of government that I would run. Only that I have never had a chance. So, Mr. Haruna, if you want to know what we would do in a government, just read my manifesto. Now, the other question was from Kenneth, who said that people talk well before they get into power. When they get into power, they change. Yes, and there are two things. One, don't just listen to what somebody is saying. Also shine a torch.
Hold them accountable.
Even before you hold them accountable, shine a torch into their lives.
Oh.
Because actually people don't change quite often. people, once they are adults, their characters are formed. If they have been thieves, they will remain thieves. If they have been liars, they remain liars. If we had examined these liars in government now, we would have known wrong. In fact, people told us that Museveni is a liar. We only didn't take it seriously. So let's take seriously examining people's characters. If you examine me and find that I am not worthy, don't vote for me. But secondly, we have to be the ones to hold people to what they say in government.
All right.
We should not just be their goodwill, that, they are good people, they are doing what they said they would do. No, we have to hold them to account. If somebody starts messing up, we throw him out. And he must know that he has masters out there. So, that I think was the last question.
Somebody was asking the question. You've been trying to get Honorable Amama Mbabazi to come to your side, but there's a time you used to think he was not very honest.
Pardon?
What has changed? Where do you want him to come to your side?
No. You see, in terms of political work and political mobilization, you want everybody to be with you.
Good and bad, passive.
Everybody, whether he's a convicted criminal, whether he's what, in terms of political support, every support is useful. Now, in terms of accountability, I have never said that there should be no time for accountability.
Oh.
There must be time for accountability for everybody, including myself.
Yes.
If anybody thinks that I have done something wrong, there must be time for me to account. So everybody who has committed any transgression will have to account. But for now, if we are working for change, everybody surely must be welcome to work for that positive change. It is that positive change that will lay the stage for people to account. Well, you cannot account in a situation like now where there is no rule of law. Well, so let's all work together. Whatever people have done, let's just work together for change. Then after we get the change, we must have accountability. In fact, we have been saying that there must be a period of truth-telling,
right,
accountability, reconciliation. That is mandatory.
We have to go. Thank you very much indeed, guest night, retired Colonel Dr. Kiiza Besigye, former FDC president. Thank you for coming.
I thank all those who have been listening out there.
Thank you for tuning in.
Thank you for having me.
I've been your host, Edmund. Spectrum will be back tomorrow.
Spend your Easter in the wild. Uganda Wildlife Authority welcomes you to visit our magnificent national parks and enjoy the fascinating range of activities. Game drives, gorilla tracking, chimpanzee tracking,